the very same three of us were live on the day that, oh my goodness, the Super League's happening and the Big Six are going to break clear and join it. We well remember that day, Danny, it was absolute chaos in here. To your credit, Mr. Jordan, you said at that stage, I can't see it happening at this particular point in time. The reason being the fans won't have it. And that is precisely what happened. The fans turned on their own clubs and said, it's not for us, don't even try it. Down the road at Stamford Bridge, we well remember Peter Cech out speaking to the supporters saying, everyone calm down. It doesn't look as if it's going to happen, etc., etc. So it didn't happen. But now, what do you know? A fresh attempt is being made to form a European Super League with the backers of the original plan relaunching it as a Unify League. Company A22 Sports Management, and they're backed by Real Madrid, has said it will submit the proposal to FIFA and UEFA for their new 96-team competition. So, Simon, at the time you said, don't write it off because it will come back probably in some shape or form. Is this the shape and form?
I feel it will. I always felt it would come back. I didn't think it was because of the fans. I felt it was because they weren't ready, and the process that they put forward wasn't right.
No, but you were right about the fans were outraged.
I'm sure they will be, and they were outraged about the Premier League being formed, but it still went ahead, and they may well be outraged about the next turn of the wheel. But the bottom line is that sometimes you have to weather the storm, let the tidal wave settle down, and then you move forward. The intellectual capital behind this, whether it's A22 or someone else, there is going to be a challenge. Why shouldn't there be a challenge? Why shouldn't there be an idea of alternate means of generating football interest?
Yeah, but this is to replace the Champions League,
Right.
which has only this year been revamped by UEFA, and we've all given it the thumbs up. Oh, we're loving this new format.
But who's given it the thumbs up? The UEFA are a monopoly. So why do you want a monopoly? Who decided that UEFA were the best game in town? Who decided?
Well, they're the authority in charge. They're not a monopoly.
But they're a monopoly because they're not challengeable. They've decided what the Champions League format is going
Is
to
the
be.
Premier League a monopoly?
To some extent, yeah. Anti-competitive, absolutely. Of course it is. It takes all the money. So if you're a European club in Italy and Germany and France and wherever else, are you going to sit there forever and let the Premier League dominate domestic football? The Premier League has got 3 times the revenue of these leagues. Are you seriously expecting the clubs like Real Madrid or say Juventus, when I spent the summer with Andrea Agnelli, who's the intellectual capital behind this will happen, and you're seeing it happen now. You're seeing streaming deals being put together. You're seeing the structure being put in place. The interesting thing was...
So why have no clubs signed up to the new proposition?
I'm sure they will do. Nothing happens overnight.
So sorry, Simon, just simplify for those listening and even myself. Are we talking about a new idea of a Super League replacing the Champions League, not replacing the Premier League? Yeah,
exactly.
Not Premier League stays.
Yes.
And then we're looking at a new European
I think we're
replacing the Champions League.
I think we're looking at a landscape of change. If you think if you're
how's that look?
If you're a club, if you're Manchester City and you're Newcastle, do you want to sit in the Premier League being told what you can spend?
No.
So eventually you're going to get to the point where you get fed up with it.
What's the other option?
And you're going to look at the other options that are around.
Do you believe them? Because A22 Sports Management are saying this will not take the place of the Premier League.
Who knows? But what we're talking about is whether there should be discussion about it and whether UEFA, because the original plan, what was wrong with the original plan then? Lack of meritocracy. Yeah. That was it. All the hysteria, all the hyperbole, the only thing that was behind it that was a problem was lack of meritocracy. Remove that, what's the problem? The problem is that you start to move towards a European Super League that starts to supersede the domestic leagues. And the reasons why that might be wanting to be happened for clubs like Juventus, for AC Milan, for Real Madrid is because they cannot compete with the Premier League. And they're not going to sit. Do you think these legacy clubs...
But they can in the new Club World Cup.
No, they can't.
Yeah, they can.
No, because the money will be distributed amongst the clubs. So the Premier League's broadcast deal is 3 times the size of the other leagues. If they go into the World Cup, they all get the same money. If they go into the Champions League, they all get the same money. So they're not. So by definition, there's a mechanism to look at the way to increase revenues.
So are you telling us today that in time, in the not too distant future, the European Super League will replace the Champions League?
I'm saying to you that in time there will be changes and that the European Super League, insofar as that's the moniker that's been attached to it by the media, will find its way to landing in a space. If people think that where we are now is where it's going to stay, then they're foolish.
So in essence, the European Super League could replace the Champions League or could get so big that it becomes more of a priority to clubs than the Premier League.
Distinct possibility.
So the domestic league does still exist, but it's not as important because the money's over here.
And that's the challenge for the Premier League. And that's and that's why PSR and things of these nature need to be looked at very carefully, and what they're trying to do to English football.
How would that generate more money in the Premier League, though? Because the argument is that our league's the best in the world because of the speed, the physicality, the entertainment, and the European games. Although we love them, they're not, I don't think, as popular in terms of fan viewing.
I think if you look at if you were to strip out the Champions League from the UEFA and say to UEFA, don't forget UEFA and FIFA are supposed to be NFPs, not for profits, right? That's what it's supposed to be. So if you were to strip that out as a commercial proposition and put it into a media company and say, what's it worth? It'll be worth 25 times earnings. So if the Champions League generates $3.5 billion, right, a year as revenues from broadcast deals, you multiply that by a media business, it's now worth 4, 5, 6, 7, 800. Right? So all of a sudden you've got a completely 75, 80, 90 billion rather than 3.5 billion. There's a whole different way. If you look at what's going on behind the scenes with people like Agnelli, he operates to the Silvio Berlusconi mode about owning content and owning models. This is going to happen. It's not going to happen. If you're Juventus and Bayern Munich and Real Madrid, are you going to sit there and allow the English Premier League to divide Europe, so all the best players, all the best coaches, all the best talent, all the money is coming into the Premier League, and just sit there and go, oh, well, that's the way that one went?
Can it happen without Premier League teams?
Yes.
Premier League clubs?
And the Premier League clubs will come.
I mean, there's a good message from Tim.
Build it.
The UK government, last time around, prevented our clubs from joining by committing to stopping it through law.
Yeah, there was also a school of thought.
That very threat stopped it in its tracks.
But if you dig deeper and actually going behind the scenes, the UK government were encouraging it first off. It was something they liked, and when Boris Johnson read the room and decided that actually it's not something that's liked, it's not something that I can get away with potentially orchestrating or being part of, because there's a school of thought, significant school of thought, that suggests the UK government were very encouraging of this particular proposition. Now, when they saw the backlash, like most governments do, they run with their hair and they hunt with the hounds. The populist movement said, aha! Actually, look at this. Here's an opportunity to gain and curry some favour with the voting public. The bottom line is, this is an interesting thing, because what they did was they made a proposition so unpalatable that actually everyone went mad for it. And do you know what UEFA did? They overreached. UEFA went, we're going to shut you down. We're going to shut the leagues down. We're going to shut the players down. If you even have a look at this again, we're going to shut you down. And then what happened? They went to the European Court of Justice, and what did they get? They got a judgment saying it doesn't need UEFA's permission. So maybe it was a bloody clever strategy to be able to get UEFA out of the way. You don't control the game. You don't control new competitions. You don't control the direction of travel. It doesn't mean you have the right to approve or disapprove. We can go and put forward a commercial initiative, and if the clubs want to be part of it, then they'll reap the whirlwind or the opportunity based upon their own decisions rather than what you dictate UEFA.
Yeah. When do you think the clubs will start signing up to the new proposal?
Who knows?
Not one has yet.
Who knows? Well, Real Madrid are very much involved with it. Juventus are very much involved with it. These are not silly, foolish clubs. Barcelona. These are not foolish clubs. There will be, out of this ether, there will be a significant sea change. Yeah. No one is going to allow the Premier League to continue the way it's being continued.
So do we all bow down to A22 sports management?
Not necessarily. It might not be them. But they've opened a pathway. Yeah. In the same way that Relevant Sports opened a pathway for domestic teams to play in America now. Yeah. Relevant Sports challenged FIFA. So now you can go and play a domestic game in America if you want to.
There's a cheeky message. So Simon spends the summer with the Juventus owner and now thinks it's a great idea.
I always thought it was a good idea. When did I think? When did I think it was a better?
Text in August I got from Agnelli. When's this guy leaving?
But if someone's going to be facetious, then be facetious based upon having some substance. At no point did I say to you, Jim, it was about the fans. At no point did I suggest to you that it was a bad idea. What I said was, factually, the only thing wrong with this was meritocracy. And as far as the proposition is concerned, they haven't got it right. They haven't got the economics right, and they haven't got the people in the room that they need to have. Nothing to do with the fans. I've sat there actually saying it had nothing to do with the fans. It had everything to do with the structure.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.